the context is something that we all know, that there is a lot of different knowledge, pieces of knowledge that you need to gather together to get a view in system biology and in biology of what's going on. And this is a quantity of data that you cannot deal with just by your brain, so you build a lot of visualization to do so. But what we try to bring as coming from the theoretical computer science and formal methods is that maybe we would need to have models that runs and that putting dynamics into all the elementary pieces of information is a key to grab some understanding into how the biological processes are going on. So to do so, we work in the context of what we call rule-based modeling. So we talk about protein-protein interaction, but not in a strictly biophysical accurate way. We don't deal with atoms. We abstract away from that by just saying that proteins are abstract agents which have sites, and these sites, think of them as the region of interaction. These sites are the resources by which the proteins will interact one with the other, so that you'll build complexity. You'll represent complexes of proteins as graphs, but which edges go through these sites, which are the resources of binding. And now that you have a formalism to speak about this interaction, you can define transformation going on in between proteins by defining rewrite rules over your graph, which is what we do. And this is, this is just given this necessary and sufficient condition, you can do this transformation. And these conditions are way less than a fully specified species. We are not talking about reaction there. We're talking about rules that speaks about patterns. So that can apply to a lot of different species. And we take that very seriously, and we'll see in the future how. But because we don't go from that to do a reaction network. We go from that to represent a given state of a protein soup as a side graph, and then recognize all the left-hand side of our rules where there are matches, and simulate the temporal transformation of our protein soup by applying stochastically our rewrites into our soup. Excuse me. So, as I've told you, it's when you gather a lot of these individual interaction all together that you start to have interesting behavior. So now that we've translated our problem of modeling into, we've defined a formal language, and so we translated that into the problem of dealing with programming. We know that to build big programs, we don't only need a good language, we also need a good ecosystem. So that's what we've built in the term of, in the context of modeling with the Kappa framework. And it's up and running, so it's available already. If you go online, you can start playing with it immediately because it's available as a web app. But of course, if you want to do real simulation, you'd better download the native app so that you'll use the whole power of your CPU. But the difference with software engineering and building big programs is that there is now a new challenge of giving the user, rendering to the user the result. It's you cannot just dump your result and it won't be, the user can't get it. So that's where visualization becomes absolutely critical. So visualization of static properties that we compute interactively while you're building your model so that you can have insight and somehow a bit of debugging, which are specific techniques because of the specificity of our side graphs, but moreover dynamic properties and really being focused on how we run our simulation. So at the static level, for example, the simple question of getting a summary of all the potential interaction that can currently have in your model is a challenge because the naive rendering that I've shown you for now with these big potatoes having small potatoes on which you put edges does not scale, and we had to find another way for real models to render these side graphs, and this is a proposal. Another thing, and that's a complete different kind of graph, but just getting a snapshot. So while you're running a simulation, at some point you want to stop and inspect what is going on, what is in your soup for now. And of course, if you just draw the graph, you'll see an airball. So we had to come with several layers of visualization, where at the first glance you just have a summary of an approximation of what kind of species are currently in your mixture, and then you can zoom in only the part in which you are interested, only in the species you are interested in. So that's what you see at the bottom, and there again you don't see exactly which site is involved in which interaction, and if you want to do so, you zoom in a third level of description where you will see only one agent, but this time it's exact neighborhood. But more generally, because we really think that there is something to extract with these rules in biology, so these rules that speaks about patterns, we would like to also have a way to describe a level as this level of rules, as the level of this interaction between rules. But if you do that in a static fashion, you end up with something from which you don't really extract more understanding. Whereas if you do that in a dynamic fashion, you have way better results. So to zoom in this thing, I'll have to introduce two things. First, just a bit of formalism. What is this? What are we calling these dependencies in between rules that we call rule influences? And then a tiny example. So each time a rule fires, it rewrites a tiny part of your protein soup, and by doing so, it creates or it deletes opportunities of interaction. So left-hand side of other rules. And that's what and in a given time window, that's what you'll count. And that's what we call rule influences. So each time we will fire a rule P, we will see how many instances of rule S we've created or delete, and we'll sum them all together on all the instances of rule P firing. This is something you cannot do in a static fashion, because you're talking about patterns, and so each instance of rule P will not have the same consequences on rule S. Anyway, so that was for the formal part. And computing this map is also a computer science challenge, but I don't go into that. So now I will just try to introduce an example so that you understand where I'm going. So here is a KABC system in which you have a protein of kind KC, which have 6 phosphorylation sites, so 6 regions that get phosphorylated and dephosphorylated, and that goes in, thanks to binding to another kind of protein called Ka and a kind of protein called Kb. Each individual of this KC goes through a cycle of phosphorylation and dephosphorylation. But at the population level now, if all these were disorganized, if all these were independent, by summing them, the average will be the average phosphorylation level will just be a constant. Whereas what we observe is that there is somehow synchronization in between these cases, because at the population level you see an oscillation of the average phosphorylation level, and that may explain a circadian clock. So how these rules that speaks about individual implement these synchronization? By getting time series of observables of pattern of interest or species of interest, you would not be able to get an answer. Whereas if you are you stay focused on our rules, and you use the dynamic influence network visualizer developed by Angus Forbes lab. You may get insight. So what are we seeing here? We're seeing so the main panel is a graph where each node is a rule. The size of this node is how much this rule has fired during the time window we're considering. And then in green you see positive influences. So when the rule has created instances of other rule. In red when it's -1, when it's delete instances. So the strength is of the nodes are proportional to the importance of that rule into the dynamics of the system. On the left top, you see the time series of the average population level, average phosphorylation level of the cases in the population. And now you'll see that when I make sliding windows, by using the dynamics, the dynamics of the system is dramatically different when in the phosphorylation phase as now, from the one soon to be in the dephosphorylation phase, where the influences in between rule is dramatically different. And thanks to the capabilities of DNUVs, you can now pin your rules to make groups of rules of the same kind. So the rules that speaks about phosphorylation of KC, the rules that speaks about the binding of a KC with a KA, the rules and so on. And then by running the movie again, making our window slide again, we see that the key part is on the top. You can't really see, but these are the rules that talks about the binding of KA with KC versus the binding of KA with KB, and that gives us our answer because what's going on at the individual level is that the phosphorylation phase is done thanks to a binding of a KC to a KA. So that's the first thing. You know also at the individual level that when a KC is highly phosphorylated, it binds strongly to a KB, and that a KB can bind a KA. And now thanks to the DNVs, what you see is that these KB bond to a KC that sequestrate the KAs for the cases that would like to go back into their phosphorylation phase and forbid them to do so. And that's what allows us to, that's what's introduced the synchronization at the population level. Statistically, of course, it's not a perfect synchronization. Okay. How I'm doing on time? Okay, so I will wrap up. So that was one example of the use of visualization in the interpretation of the result of our simulation. The elephant in the room is the fact that from our simulation we also extract a trace of simulation, and from this trace we compute the causal path of events of interest and what we call stories, so the different way an event of the different minimal path to an event of interest, and that is something I wish I could talk more about, but is part of the framework which is, as I've told you, up and running. Thank you.
Yeah. So the Kappa language is used by a relatively large number of users, correct? Mm-hmm. Do you keep track of how many of those users make use of the visualizations existing in Kappa, and how many are just using the rule-based part of the system?
So the visualizations are not that old in comparison to let's say the Kappa language is 10 years old. Visualization is really the effort of the 3 last years. And I would say that it has completely changed the way people are using Kappa, and I'm pretty confident to say that all the users are now using the visualization, and that it has changed their life in terms of how, especially what we see immediately is how fast the interactivity while writing the model, how much it has improved the speed to what they write models, and how less stupid mistake there is in models thanks to that.
Okay, and you know that because you observe them as they use the system, or because you observe their activity?
Because of feedbacks.
Okay, so they give you feedback.
Hmm?
They give you feedback.
They give us feedbacks, and it's also extremely valuable for us to give feedbacks. When they say what is it's not working, we can now say, look, you should have looked at that visualization. You would have immediately seen the mistake.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.